Hello everyone, welcome to this demo theater on an introduction to Jupyter notebooks, ArcGIS in a notebook. So my name is Rohit Singh. I'm the lead developer of the ArcGIS API for Python, and joining me is Atma Mani. He's the lead product engineer. And thanks for joining. It's a lovely day outside, but you decided to join this session. Thanks for that. So how many of you are already familiar with Jupyter Notebook? Okay, great. So about 50-50, Jupyter Notebook, it's like a browser-based Python IDE of sorts. Primarily, it's used by analysts and data scientists, and it's a very interactive environment, and it lets you not just write code as developers. You can also describe what you're doing. So, and you can do that using Markdown, and insert your headings and titles. You can move these cells around. You can go ahead, edit these cells. And then once you've authored, you can also embed rich media. So I've got a file here. I've embedded this image. So the idea behind the notebook is that it lets analysts and data scientists not just share your code, but also describe what you're doing, describe that using text, rich media, equations, charts, and graphs. And with the ArcGIS API for Python, you can do a lot more integration with this. So we are going to start, break this talk into two sections. One is about the notebook, and then Atma is going to do that, and it'll come back to me, and I'll show you the integration points of ArcGIS in the notebook. So it's over to Atma now.
Thanks, Rohit. Thank you, Rohit. So let's start with this question. Why do you want to use notebooks? There are so many IDEs out there, PyCharm, Visual Studio Code, Sublime Text, and all that. Why do you want to use notebooks? Well, the simple answer is that it's extremely easy to use. The innate nature of Python is a read, eval, print loop, right? So you type code, you just pick up a terminal, type something, evaluate that, and then you get to run that and you get the result back, and go change things and run it again, you get the result back. So it's a very iterative nature of just using the programming language itself. That's very dissimilar from something you write in Java or C or C++, where you need, even if you want to sum up two numbers, you got to run the whole script, the whole code to even get the results. Python is not like that. Jupyter Notebook goes to the core of that kind of experience. Whatever you do, simple stuff or complicated stuff, you take it a bit by bit. You run something, you just have it in your memory, and then go back and do something new. You don't have to run all the way from the top. You don't have to evaluate the whole thing if you're just adding something new. I'll go into details of all of these a little bit later. There's really good IntelliSense. An IDE should have IntelliSense. An IDE should help you type good code. Jupyter Notebook is one of the best IDEs, even though it's very simple to use. Rich text and multimedia. Jupyter Notebook IDE is kind of changing the pattern of what an IDE looks like. You not only have code, but you also have English. You also have text. You can write text in markdowns, italics in bold, promote the concepts that you want to, put text, put images, put equations in there, write text in text format, TEX format. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about guidelines of how to use notebook, what's the good practices in notebooks. And then we'll talk about some extensions. In fact, this is a notebook that I'm running. It shows up as a PowerPoint presentation. I'll show you some really cool open source extensions that you can use in your notebooks and really get, improve your productivity. Let's do the read, eval, print loop. Let me go out of the notebook format. Let's expand this one up and do this one too. Start from here. So what do we mean by that? This is a code cell. You can type whatever you want. 1 plus 34. Shift enter, you run it, you get the result back. Go back and change and put any number there. Get a new result back. This is the core concept of a Jupyter notebook. you can do whatever you want there. You can do digital signal processing, image processing. You can do GIS in a code cell, and that's what Rohit is going to show you. You can define a function here, run it, call a function, go back and change the inputs, change what a function actually means, run it back and get a new result. Do the same kind of stuff here. Easy intelligence and code completion, right? So you can go ahead and import some of the standard modules. Here what I want to do is I want to see what all methods are available under OS, what all properties are there. So I hit OS dot and I get code intelligence. For instance, I want to find what is the current path I'm running. So I can say something is like get C, WD, you have code completion. You can try to run it, and then it says it's a function, it's not a property. You can go ahead and say function and run it, I have the results back. But I want to find out what's the signature of this, so I can do shift tab over there and I get help right then and there. It's pulled up from your doc strings. You can easily recover from errors. So for instance, let's say get executable path. There's no function like this, you can just run it. You have an error, go back, try to finish it, get the results back. Rich text and multimedia, this is a code cell. You can type code in Markdown, you can type text in Markdown, you can have hyperlinks, bold text, italics, run it. You have bold text and italics, it's Esri.com website. Headings of different sizes. You can embed images. I'm running this notebook as a RISE plugin. So here, if I go back, get out of it, it's simply a notebook. Once you install this plugin, you have a button like this. It turns your notebook into a presentation. If you don't like this format, you can still have collapsible headings. So you can go back and collapse these headings. So you can have your notebooks in compartments. You don't have to show a certain piece of code if you're running through it. Let's expand this one back out. Now let's get into the real part of why notebooks are really popular. It's because of the data exploration that is made possible. So here, I'm going and reading earthquake CSV file. Immediately, I can print out the pandas data frame and I get a tabular representation of data. I can pull a plot and immediately visualize a matplotlib plot. And then that's just plotting right next to my code cell here. Let me get out of my notebook presentation mode and you'll see what I mean. So this is just an example of what I'm just getting started here. You can use so many different plotting libraries and get your plots in there. You can use bokeh and other plots and you'll have interactive plots and not just images. So this is just an idea of what a notebook is. Now the real part of the session is how can you do GIS in a notebook? So for that, I'm going to shift back to Rohit for this.
Okay, so many of you might be wondering, like, how do we get notebooks? How do we start notebooks? I think the easiest way to do that is you can go to notebooks.esri.com. That's where all our guides and sample notebooks are available, but you can also go ahead and click New Python Notebook and start experimenting with it. You can start playing with it without installing anything. So without any installation, you want to quickly get started, try it out, do it there, and you could go explore some of our samples which are in the form of notebooks. And once you open those samples, you can click the run method here. And this notebook is representative of an analysis that where there's there's markdown, there's headings, there's explanatory text, there are embedded images. It's talking about the floods in Chennai. And then you can also embed like YouTube videos by giving the video ID. So rich multimedia support is in there. And then you can embed your code. So here we are connecting to ArcGIS, creating a map. And when you query that map, you get a live map within the notebook. And you can run through this analysis. You can import local data, import that in your GIS. You can do things like spatial analysis, adding layers, interpolating points, things like that. The other way is if you started liking notebooks, you want to get it on your system, then you install Anaconda from Continuum Analytics. So just search for Anaconda download. That would be anaconda.com, and you can get download the Python 3.6 version. Go ahead and install it. Once you do that, then you can go to your command prompt and just give this command Jupyter notebook, and it creates a new empty notebook. So it shows a directory listing, like whichever directory you start from, it shows the list of files, and then you can go and create a new Python notebook. So that's how you get an empty notebook. Now notebooks are great for interactive experiences. So as you're dealing with data, you want to try out things. Here's a notebook that talks about my experience. I went to Berlin, and I saw that there were these bike lanes were very well integrated into the city. So I wanted to explore that. So very easily, you can connect to your GIS and bring in a map. Now when you connect to your GIS, notebooks also let you get IntelliSense. So if you do Shift Tab on my GIS, I see that there are parameters to pass in the URL, username and password. So I could connect to ArcGIS Online, my organization, or I could connect to ArcGIS Enterprise. And that GIS object lets me manage my, you get IntelliSense on that. You do GIS dot, and the API reveals itself. So you can manage your content, you can manage groups, create groups, or users. You can also bring in a map, and you can give it any location. It geocodes that location and embeds a map of that location within the notebook. So I was in Berlin, but the map is zoomed out quite a bit. You can do things like geocoding. It's very easy. Just given an address or a place name, geocode it, and I'm querying the first result. So that's just taking the first element from that list. That's in the location now. Once again, I'm creating a new map and using the draw method to draw that location. I can also change the extent. So if I change it to the geocoded extent, the map zooms in. So I'm controlling my map through the notebook. Now this map comes with several base maps. Let's look at those. You can query those base maps by querying the base map property. So let's change this base map from the topographic map to the satellite or the high. Let's change it to the satellite base map. And you'd notice that I actually ran my cells in a different order. I queried the base map first, then I set it. Notebooks let you do that. You can reorder your cells. So it's a very interactive experience, and you get high resolution satellite imagery. For Berlin, it's 30 centimeter resolution imagery, and that's the TV tower there, very close to where we are presenting at the Dev Summit there. Now talking about the bikes in Berlin. So ArcGIS Online is a great resource for content of any type. You can, I'm searching for bikes in Berlin. I get back a list of items. Now, normally, if I were to just query that list of items, I'll get like a text representation of those, but we've done some additional integration. So you can use the display method of the notebook to get a richer representation of those items. So we get, the second result looks like the bike lanes in Berlin. We can add them to a map. So once again, creating a map and adding that layer, which was the second result, so subscript 2. And my map is updated with those bike lanes, and you get the pop-ups as well. So we know where the bike lanes are, where are the bike stations. For that, I found this URL online that's using the bikes API to give me the location of these shared bikes or rental bikes, bike shares, and that is in the form of a CSV file. Now, using pandas, which is Python's library for data access and analysis, you can read in data of many different types. One of those types is a CSV. You could read in Excel as well. So many different file formats are available. And this comes into your notebook as a data frame. You can see, what this data frame has a timestamp. It has the name of the bike station, its location, the number of bikes there are at each station, and how many empty spaces there are, and so on. And if you scroll down, you'll see that in addition to the bike stations, it also has the locations of each individual bike in that network. So that's just showing the individual bikes. You can do, exploratory data analysis. So I'm filtering the data frame where the bikes are more than one. And so that's using pandas code, also known as like Pandorable code. That's a pattern using which you can easily filter or merge data frames. So I'm able to filter the data frame by just the bikes where there are more than one bike. So that's all the bike stations. Now, very easily you can import a pandas data frame that has an address or a lat long column as a layer in your GIS by saying gis.content.import data. And here I am bringing a new map and adding the layer that I just imported. And in addition to visualizing where those bike stations are, I'm also using smart mapping. So I've told it to render them with the class size renderer by the number of bikes at each location. So I know where those bikes are and how many bikes are at each location. So one of the things that Atma mentioned was that Notebook is great for also sharing. He was sharing a slideshow. Let me show how you can do that. So I've also installed this extension called Rise. And what it lets you do is you can view a cell toolbar, that's the slideshow toolbar, and you can mark cells as this is a slide, this just shows up with that slide, and then there can be sub-slides and fragments. Once you configure it like that, you can easily convert this notebook in a slideshow that you can use for presenting your work. Sorry. I want to make it full screen. And so we got a presentation out of our notebook, what we just did. You can bring in a map showing you can geocode a location. So that workflow now became a bike. Now, I didn't run this cell. The way you run a cell is you've got a run button on the toolbar, or you can do Shift Enter, and then this is showing those shared bikes in Berlin. All those results are now in the form of a slideshow. Okay, how are we doing on the time? I think we've got like 10 minutes left, but let's make it a little interactive, and maybe we could try something or answer your questions, or you want us to try something out, show how it works in the notebook, we could do that. Unless you want to show something. Yes. Okay. Okay. So the question is that in the Python API there is a data frame, and then there's a spatial data frame. So the data frame is provided by pandas. Pandas is a standard Python library which lets you bring in any tabular data as a table that we just saw. What we've done is that we've extended that pandas data frame and added the shape column to it, and we've also added geometry operations to it. And the advantages are that you can read in natively, you can read in shape files and file geodatabases, get it in a tabular form, and you can work with it as if it were a pandas data frame. You can write out shape files as well. You cannot write out the file geodatabases yet, unless you also have ArcGIS under the hood. Another way, that was for the difference between pandas and our spatial data frame. We also give you the ability to filter by do spatial searches and spatial joins. So adding spatial dimension to the pandas data frame. Yep. Okay, any more questions? No? Okay. So another, where we've integrated, I'll just tell you about, the levels of integration that we've put in. You've seen how these items show up with a rich representation that looks like the search results from ArcGIS Online. That's the same integration that we've done with users and groups. You get that. We've built the map widget that shows up in the notebook. That's another level of integration that can be automated. And then if you've got imagery layers, then you can do raster analysis within the notebook. And when you query an imagery layer, you get a raster representation of that layer. Let's have a look at a notebook that I had shown in the morning at the plenary. Let's see if we have it open. Okay. I've got this other one. I could show that, Missouri floods. So here's another notebook which shows that here I'm querying my GIS for an imagery layer. That's an imagery layer item. Similarly, these items can have layers. So if I query the layers property on it, I'll get the layers. And if I take the first layer and query it, I'll get a raster representation of that layer within the notebook. So that's another level of integration that we've done. Yes? Okay, you want to see an example of the spatial data frame? Sure. So let's create a new spatial data frame and read in a shapefile. That's interesting. Let's do that. So actually this one actually does it. So this is an analysis on wildfires that I had shown in the morning. And from the ArcGIS features module, I'm importing the spatial data frame. And the spatial data frame has methods to read in feature classes. And here I'm reading in a file geodatabase into this data frame object. By querying its shape, we see that it has 1.88 million rows and 39 columns. I'm filtering those 39 columns to just these columns that I want for my analysis, and I'm querying the top 5 rows in that spatial data frame. Once I do that, get this data as a data frame, notice that it also has a shape column. I can then do exploratory data analysis in the notebook. So I'm on that data frame object. I can here I'm doing some getting the x and y using pandas notation. So from the geometry, I'm querying the x and y, the lat long. I get those. I can use pandas to group, add additional columns. So it did not have a month and day of week. So I'm using pandas to use the date to derive the month and the day of week. I'm adding those. I am filtering the rows that were due to arson, filtering the rows that were of fires that were caused due to lightning, and using that later on for my group by analysis, down below here. But that's showing how you can plot using the spatial data. Yeah, this is the one where I use the arson and the lightning. Okay, so we are close to the next session. Actually, we had 2 sessions back to back, and that's going to go in a little more detail about data science workflows with ArcGIS. So I think since we just got an introduction to the notebook, I think it's a good time that we could jump into that. It's a continuation of the session.